What's up, Achievers? Today we're talking all about kettlebell swings. So let's start with positioning. It's so important that before you start to just swing kettlebells around, you master the hip hinge. And in a proper hip hinge position, your shoulders are going to be aligned over your hips, and your hips are going to be aligned over your knees. And while you're in that position, you're maintaining integrity through your spine, so you're basically in a flat back position. Now you're going to want to find a sweet spot where you can maintain this position and sit your hips back as far as possible. And this sweet spot is going to be different for everybody, so depending on your height, your limb lengths, previous injury history, it's going to look a little bit different for everyone. But what you can do in order to try to find this sweet spot is to do the reach the wall hip hinge. So for the reach the wall hip hinge, you're going to take about a foot's length step away from the wall. And then from there, you're going to get into your hinge position. So you're keeping your shoulders above your hips above your knees, and you're reaching your hips back. And you're trying to find the position where you can most easily maintain your shoulders above your hips and your hips above your knees while also hitting the wall. And something that you'll notice is that if you keep your hips too high, you'll have a harder time reaching the wall. And the same thing is if you keep your hips too low, you'll have a harder time reaching the wall. So you're going to find that point where as you sit back, you figure out how much knee bend you need, where your hips need to be in space in order to really maximize your hip hinge and sit back as far as possible. Once you've mastered the hip hinge, it's time to start with the kettlebell deadlift. So the kettlebell deadlift really sets the foundation for the kettlebell swing. The deadlift strengthens the hip hinge pattern. So now that you have that pattern down, you want to add a little bit of strength to it. Now the ways in which the kettlebell deadlift is different from the swing is that the deadlift is a grind, whereas the swing is a ballistic movement. A grind is more of a slow, controlled movement, whereas a ballistic movement is fast and powerful. So while the deadlift and the swing are actually inherently very different exercises, the deadlift is still really important to practice because you want to get stronger in that hinging pattern to set yourself up for success in your kettlebell swings. Okay, so now that you've practiced the deadlift, it's time to start swinging. So we're going to start with the initial hike pass. And this is what sets you up for your set of swings. The hike pass is taking the kettlebell from the floor to between your legs. And that initial hike, if you do it well, is going to set you up for a successful set. So to set up for the hike pass, step about a foot behind the kettlebell. You're going to get into your hip hinge position, reach your hands out in front of you for the bell, grab the handle, and tilt the bell back toward you. You want the bell to become an extension of your straight wrists or an extension of your arms. Now from there, maintaining your body position, you're going to engage your lats and hike that bell between your legs. You want to hike it up high and as far back as you can without losing the integrity of your spine. There are a couple mistakes that we tend to see here. One is allowing your hips to hike up as you pull the bell between your legs. And what that's going to do is it's not going to set you up for a good, powerful hip extension on the way up for that swing. So instead, you want to maintain your hip position as you pull the bell back. And the other mistake is hiking the bell too low. So not bringing it up high between your legs, but actually bringing it down below your knees. And in this case, you're probably going to feel that in your lower back, at least eventually as the bell gets heavier. And we don't want that. So you really want to practice bringing that bell up high. If you can imagine that there's a line between each knee, you want to try not to hit that line with the bell. You want to go above that line as you hike it back. So once you've practiced the hike pass, we're going to start swinging, and we're going to go into what we call a dead stop swing. And this is basically an individual swing where you're breaking it up into single swings as opposed to a consecutive set of swings. For the dead stop swing, you're going to perform the hike pass like we just practiced, but instead of letting the bell travel back forward toward the floor, you're going to hike it back, and then you're going to stand up tall and direct the bell straight out in front of you. The bell should get to about shoulder height. Then you're going to bring the bell back between your legs just like that initial hike and return it to the floor. And that's your individual single rep of a dead stop swing. We recommend practicing these dead stop swings so that you can start to get the feel of the timing, how powerfully you need to stand up in order to get the bell out in front of you, how to bring the bell back between your legs. So it's really important to start breaking them up into single reps so that you get into a rhythm before we go into consecutive swings. Now once you're there, let's string some swings together. So for a set of consecutive swings, we want to do that initial hike. We're going to stand up tall, let the bell go straight out in front of us. We're going to hike it back again, and just again, stand up tall, bell straight out in front of you. So we're going to just continue that pattern for the set. Let's say you're going to do 10 reps. You're going to get 10 swings, and then you'll hike it back between your legs and safely park it back on the floor when you're done. Now there are some key components that we really want to look for when we're looking at the consecutive swings. Number one is that you drive your feet hard into the floor. You want to feel like your feet are rooted to the ground. And something that might happen is that you might feel like you're you're rocking back on your heels and that your toes are lifting up. And the reason that might happen is because you are probably trying to keep your chest up too tall in the backswing. And so if you're experiencing this, try to let your chest fall forward a little bit more, and that might allow you to keep your whole foot rooted to the ground a little bit better. Number 2 is a full lockout at the top of the swing. So it's really important that at the top, when you have the bell straight out in front of you, that your legs are fully locked out, your knees fully extended, your hips are fully extended, and you're squeezing your glutes tight. That's going to maximize the amount of force that you put into the ground and how fast the kettlebell can come out in front of you. Number 3 is spine position. So we really want to make sure, like we were talking about in the hip hinge, the hike pass, and in the deadlift, is maintaining integrity through your spine through the entire movement. That means not rounding over or arching back. And a common mistake that we see at the lockout position is people leaning back at the top of the swing and creating this arch in their lower back at the top. So if you're noticing this is something you do, we'd recommend going back to the kettlebell deadlift and practicing the top of the deadlift standing up tall, getting your hips slightly tucked under, rib cage down, and making sure that you're not arching your back or rounding your back in either direction. Practicing this with the deadlift will then ingrain a much better pattern for when you stand up into the top of your swing. Number 4 is your arms. So the arms actually don't do a lot of work in the kettlebell swing. It's mostly coming from your legs and your hips, but the arms do direct the bell where you want it to go. And so what we want to think about with your arms is keeping your shoulders in a down and back tight position. So when you come up to the top of the swing, try not to let the kettlebell pull your arms forward. If that happens, it's going to really mess with the timing and with the rhythm of your swing. So instead, keep your shoulders down and back, your lats engaged. And when you come up to the top, keeping that bell a little bit closer to your body will help you to be able to control the movement a lot better. And finally, number 5 is the timing or the sequencing of the swing. And this can be really, really challenging to learn. And it's another reason why we recommend those dead stop swings to begin with. So the timing that we want to see is after you hike the bell back between your legs, you drive down into the floor and extend your hips. Once your hips are extended, then the bell should float up. As the bell is floating up, you're keeping that lockout. You're keeping the lockout as the bell floats down until your top of your arms get to about the rib cage height. Once the top of your arms hit your ribs, then you hike your hips back again, bring the kettlebell between your legs, and repeat the process. So it's hips, then float, then bell floats down, then hips, then float, bell floats down, then hips. And this timing is going to really help you to feel powerful and in control of your swings. The biggest mistake we usually see with timing is people trying to control the bell with their arms. So trying to lift the bell with their arms without getting full hip extension first. And as you can see, that really breaks up the rhythm and makes it a lot less powerful of a movement. I really hope this tutorial helped you feel more comfortable and more confident in your swings. And we always recommend seeking out a StrongFirst instructor to get some hands-on feedback and coaching so that you can really make sure that you're doing everything you can to make your swings the most perfect swings for you. If you liked this video, hit that little thumbs up button below and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And until next time, peace, love, and muscle.